Hello, welcome back to Trophy Wives Podcast. I'm Myra,
And I'm Robin.
and
We're here to
we're here
talk
to talk
about
about books.
books.
Okay, I'll do it again. Hello, welcome back to Trophy Wives Podcast. I'm Myra,
And I'm Robin.
and we're here to talk about books. What's up, Robin?
What up, Myra?
Look
You
at that
know,
hair.
look at this lack thereof hair. Yes, I got a haircut today and dyed it, had it dyed.
Looks amazing.
Thank you. For anyone that's just listening, not watching, I've now cut my hair and it looks like a pixie cut and it's all spiky and pink.
Is it pink?
No, but anyone that's listening
Oh,
won't know. And now they'll have to go
right.
look at our YouTube just to see.
Ooh, smart. I was like,
Thank you. It was a
rubs her
ploy.
eyes. Yeah. So, how are you, Robin?
I'm okay. I'm doing great. I just saw you
Mm-hmm.
yesterday.
Yes.
Of the day we're recording, I saw you yesterday. I'm trying to get into, I know we've talked about before, I'm in my stationary era.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing letter writing to each other. I'm doing letter writing to my other friends. I don't know if they want it, but I will force it upon them.
Yeah, they'll write back one day.
Yeah, they'll write back. I had one friend send me another, like, I know you sent me a Valentine's Day card, but another one of my friends did, and I was not expecting it. It was very sweet.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I was like, this is so cute. So I got that, and then I've been buying a bunch of other greeting cards. We bought some. You were with me when I bought some last night. They're very
Mhm.
pretty, very cute, mythology themed greeting cards. So very excited about that. I'm also starting to scrapbook. So I'm assembling my arsenal for all the things we need for our scrapbook. So once we get it all
Yeah,
together, we'll have our scrapbook night and we can scrapbook our lives.
I'm excited.
Yeah. And I've also been taking photos with that my Canon camera that we bought that one day when we were consignment store shopping.
Hmm.
So I'm
What a find.
hoping, I know it was such a great find. It was like $30. And for anyone out there that has either looked or purchased an older camera that is still in working condition, they do not
Mhm.
sell for that cheap. So it was a very great find.
Yeah, I've seen those go for like $200 on like Poshmark and eBay and stuff because all the girlies want them right now
Well, sorry, girlies, maybe you should look at different places than eBay.
at your local consignment store.
Yeah, which I think it was lucky that we came across it because I feel like if it was at Walmart or at like Goodwill or something like that, somebody would have already snatched it.
Yeah, it would have been on Depop by now.
So it was a great find. And then I also have talked to you about this, but I want to start journaling.
Hmm.
So I'm going to try to get some kind of journal sometime soon. I'm trying to do some research to see which one would best fit what kind of journaling I want to do or what would be the most consistent type of journaling for me. So when I find out, I'll share with everyone here so that if you're also interested in the type of journaling I pick up, you can also participate with me. So what about you, Myra? What have you been up to?
Me, okay. I also did some shopping at an estate sale and I got like little vintage watches that I'm really excited about because I've been looking for them too. And it's another one of those things like the camera that like all the girlies are after them right now, it seems. My other update, sardine toast. I think that's my hyperfixation meal this week. I don't know if you go through phases where you're like really into something and then you
Yes.
completely hate it like a couple months later, but I've been making sardine toast and I get sourdough bread from Trader Joe's and I've been making hummus at home. So I smear like a butt ton of hummus and then I put a can of sardines on it. A can of sardines minus one because I have to pay my dog the sardine tax.
Yes, yes.
And then on top of that, I do like a healthy amount of pickled red onions. I don't know how you feel about sardines, but you should try it. It's not bad.
I don't think I've ever had sardines
Hmm.
plain to be a good judge of character on if I
Okay.
like the taste or not. So maybe I would be into it. Who knows?
Yeah, they're good. A little lemon juice and salt, and I think they're pretty good. But that's that's what's up with me. So I'll do a little reading update. I am still reading When the Moon Hatched, and I'm so annoyed with myself that I haven't finished it. But I'm like halfway through. I haven't been reading it for long enough chunks of time, like every time I sit with it to really get into it. But the first half went pretty slow for me. So I wasn't very motivated to keep going, but I trust you. Like I fully trust you when you say that it gets better. So I'm pushing through. I'm going to finish it. And then I put a hold on Libby for Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I'm going to start that. I'm going to start the audiobook when I walk my dog, and then I'm going to read When the Moon Hatched on my Kindle. So that's where I'm at with reading. What about you?
So my reading update is Pride and Prejudice. This is my book that I think will be my Moon Hatched, in a sense where I'm picking it up in chunks.
Yeah.
Just because I don't know, not that I've already read the book once before, so it's not as if I need to read it in its entirety in one go. I know what happens, but I've been picking up books in between this book.
That's how I've been.
So yeah, it makes it a lot harder, and I do understand where you're coming from, because I think when I read When the Moon Hatched, I read it before Hofast, right? And I blazed through the book. And so it helped me when, like, not to have to stop halfway through, pick up another book, and then pick that book back up. But I'm okay with Pride and Prejudice being my mashed potato book.
And mashed potato book, we got this term from another podcast called Books Unbound. It's a book that you think you're going to enjoy a lot, and then you keep putting it off, but then you wait too long, and like just like with your mashed potatoes, they can get cold and then they're not as good as you thought they would be. So same premise for the book. But yeah, I think When the Moon Hatched is my mashed potato book right now, but I'm going to finish it. I'm going to say that I will commit to finishing it by the end of this week.
If not by the end of this month, because we plan on talking about it next month.
If
So
not by the end of the month, yeah.
if you need extra time, you have it.
Yeah. So we are going to go into the reason for the season, the main reason why we're doing this video. We want to talk about Bride, and we've been wanting to talk about Bride since we finished Bride. We have a lot of thoughts. I think it's a really interesting book. I think there's a lot to say about it. So we just want to give like a little bit of a review and tell you what we thought.
So please, if you care about spoilers and you haven't read it, or you want to read it and you don't want spoilers, do not keep listening past this point. If you don't care and you want to hear us talk about it, keep listening and enjoy. We're going to offer a brief overview of the background, the world, the characters, and kind of what happens, so that when we get into talking about what we really want to talk about at the end of this, you have context and you're not completely lost. So, a little brief background. The book Bride by Ali Hazelwood is set in a world with 3 different species: werewolves, vampires, and humans. In America, they are segregated. Everyone distrusts everyone. Vampires are the weakest of the 3. Humans have power in numbers. We are trying to remember here that we are also humans. Sorry. Every time we say humans, we're like as if we're not.
They.
But humans can breed easily and often. Weres have physical strength, and vampires are the least physically powerful and the least successful with breeding. So in order to improve their odds against the weres, vampires have treaty with the humans by means of collateral, trading one child of importance from each species with each other. Their sole purpose is to die if anything ever happens between humans and vampires. The werewolves stay to themselves in their territory. However, with a future change in human government, the vampires begin to see their treaty slip away. In order to mitigate the potential power shift with the werewolves, a marriage proposal is proposed between vampires and the werewolves alpha.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Okay.
Very interesting.
Okay, so I'm going to give a little background about our main character, Misery. Misery is a vampire, and she's one of the last vampire collaterals used between the vampires and the humans. She spent most of her formative years in the human world from her childhood to her late teens. And because of that, she feels like she doesn't quite belong with one or the other. Like she feels like she's too vampire for the humans and too human for the vampire. But because of that, she's the perfect pawn to use in the marriage with the werewolves arranged by her father. However, Misery only wants to lead, her life in peace and find her lifelong friend, Serena, who has recently gone missing. And then some backstory on our other main character, Lo. So this is the alpha of the werewolves, and this is who Misery is supposed to marry. Lo is a werewolf. He's an alpha, and he's drawn a lot of attention to himself recently because he challenged the former alpha and killed him in combat. So he's taken over since then. He only cares about the well-being of his people and keeping peace and keeping the peace by any means necessary. And this includes going to the lengths of marrying a vampire.
Right. And, both of these characters are very interesting. Misery, partly because her name. Who names
Yeah,
their child that?
I know.
But it we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. You'll understand why the fathers are a definite type of character. So the story starts with Misery, who's asked by her father to do him a favor in order to help ensure that the vampires are not in danger of being killed by the werewolves. This is after he's already had her be collateral between the humans and vampires for 10 years. So this is a pretty big ask of him. So she's asked to act as another collateral for the vampires and the werewolf wedding. So she's asked to marry Lo, alpha of the werewolves, and she finally concedes once she learns that she would be marrying Lo Moreland, which is perfect luck because the only clue Misery has to find Serena, her lost friend, is a note with the name L.E. Moreland. So the story starts with the wedding. This is when the story really starts to get going. And as Misery is walking down the aisle, we see Lo smell her, which is a pretty big moment in this book. And when he smells her, he grabs her up and smells her deeply. And this puts everyone at edge, partly because, werewolves and vampires are like arch nemesis. Like, they're not meant to mingle with one another.
Yeah.
So she believes that Lo thinks that she smells bad, which made me kind of giggle because it's kind of like, ma'am, why would he
Mm-hmm.
grab you up and smell you deeply if you smell terrible? But
It reminded me of that scene in Twilight when Bella goes into biology with Edward, and he's like,
the fan.
yeah. So that's where they're at. Misery thinks that she's just really smelly, and that's why Lo wants to take a big whiff, which makes no
Yep.
sense to me. Okay, so they're married. We're gonna cut to Misery leaves vampire territory. She goes to werewolf territory with Lo, and she's in what we're gonna call the pack house. And this is kind of my understanding is that it's kind of like the pack's headquarters. It's Lo's home, but everyone, the whole pack kind of comes in and out freely. So Misery lives with the werewolves now. She's learning about their culture, their way of life, the pack setup, their hierarchy. And then once she's in the house, we get to meet Anna, who is Lo's younger sister. She's 7 years old. She's super cute. She is so trusting and loving, so much so that she begins to make quick friends with Misery. Lo loves her so much, he cares for her deeply, and he'll do anything to keep her safe. At some point, after she gets to the house, Misery witnesses an attempt to kidnap Anna by another member of Lo's pack, and she goes to stop the kidnapping before anything can happen. Misery begins to learn about mates, about the idea of mates. At first, Lo doesn't want to tell her, but she asks and asks and asks. And finally, she learns that mates are a bond between wolves and their soulmates, someone who is made specifically for them. And we learn that this is bigger than just your partner. This is like something that you can't control. As Lo describes it, quote, sometimes is just a gut feeling, something that grabs you by the stomach and doesn't let go, not ever. And then during her time in the pack house, we start to learn about this smaller kind of fringe group called the Loyalists within the pack. And these are people that are remaining loyal to the former Alpha, and they don't believe that Lo should be Alpha. They're coincidentally led by the previous Alpha's mate, Emery, and they've been recruiting young, impressionable members of the pack to help plot against Lo. It's also believed that they attempted to kidnap Anna. After Misery spends some time with the pack, Lo begins to trust her because she becomes friends with Anna. She cares deeply for Anna, and he sees that she's not as bad as vampires are made out to be.
A lot of things happen too to help kind of build the scene, which I think is kind of funny considering we're all led astray at the very end. It's a very big plot twist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to talk about kind of the conflict of the story and what happens that at the end that makes it such a big deal. So we find that Misery at one point gets kidnapped by a member of the pack, Mick, who up until this point has been a guard for Misery in the sense that he's keeping her safe, and he's one of Lowe's most trustworthy seconds of his pack. He's been with Lowe since childhood. He remembers, like, Lowe remembers playing with like Mick as a child and being cared for by Mick as a child. So it was a very big blow to everyone involved when we find out Mick is the one that kidnapped Misery. I never trusted him from the start, so that's just me. But she's drugged by Mick and brought to a room that just happens to also be the house that Serena is being kept in. So finally, Misery is reunited with her best friend Serena after looking high and low and never being able to find her. But then it's revealed by Serena that they're actually in vampire territory and that they were kidnapped by her father. So, as the readers begin to find out, Misery's father was the one pulling the strings to kidnap Anna and Serena. So, it's slowly revealed to us that Anna and Serena are both part human, part werewolf, which we haven't seen since like that happen up until now.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's a
the
big
reason
deal.
it's a very big deal, and the reason he kidnaps both Serena and or still like basically kidnaps Serena and attempts to kidnap Anna
Mm-hmm.
is because he fears that if the world finds out that humans can that humans and werewolves can be together and make children, that it will be kind of a symbolism for peace between them, and then that will make vampires an easier target because
Right.
that's like an instant treaty, if you're able to get together and bond and have children, you're creating a different species and therefore also creating a different sense of like loyalty amongst them.
Right.
So if we can't tell already, Misery's father is a complete piece of work.
Yep.
He basically kidnaps Misery in order to lure Lowe to the vampire headquarters to help save Misery. So he threatens Misery's life if Lowe does not hand over Anna. And it's revealed that Misery is Lowe's mate and that he would do anything for her to survive. Which it should be known that before this, Misery thought that she might be Lowe's mate, and Lowe pretty much denied that fact. And it was very heartbreaking for her. And honestly, I'm just surprised that he even had the willpower to tell her no.
Mm-hmm.
But to each their own, I guess. So Misery is adamant with her father that he's wrong and Lowe is not her mate, since Lowe had already told her that that's not true. But Lowe himself did not deny that they were mates. And this kind of made Misery honestly heartbroken right there in front of him, and also while her life is being threatened by her father.
Mm-hmm.
So a fight breaks out between Serena, Lowe, Misery, and Owen being Misery's brother, their father, and then the guards. So all of the guards are killed, and Misery's father ends up being tied up and eventually killed after, they try to glean some information from him before they ended up killing him. So she left Owen in charge. Misery's father at this point had kind of held like a higher position within the vampires, and Owen had these big plans anyways. So, Misery was like, Owen, you can have it. I want no part in this. I don't feel connected to the vampires in that way, but I think that you would do an excellent job. So Owen basically promises that he would rebuild the vampires to be a more respectable species and to make sure that they don't try any more shady stuff that their father did while he was like basically in charge. So I think the book kind of ends on that note where we see the vampires start to shift to a different type of, leadership. We see the werewolves kind of finding themselves in a more peaceful time. They found a way to deal with the loyalist. And then we also see the humans start to undergo a new government leader. to lead them. So everything's kind of like cooling down at the very end. And we
Mhm.
finally see where Lo and Misery make up. He apologizes for lying to her. And he does confirm to her that they are mates. Can confirm.
He's
So,
like, just kidding, babe.
yeah, just kidding. Sorry about that. JK, well, you used to love me. So that's kind of where the book ends. There's nothing else really like to be answered for. So I think the book offered us a lot of interesting topics that we did not necessarily discuss in
Yeah.
the brief synopsis we gave you guys, so that we could discuss it here. And I think the only right one to start with would be the topic of mates. So Myra, what'd you think? Were you surprised? Did you kind of see it coming? What are your
I
thoughts?
was I was surprised because I mean, it didn't even cross my mind that werewolves could have a mate outside of their species. I thought that was really interesting. But when Lo explains it to Misery, he doesn't specify it's only within werewolves. He's just like, this is a thing that happens to us werewolves. It seemed like it was headed in that direction. And to be honest with you, I feel like you're better than me at like guessing things that are going to happen. I'm pretty naive about these like plot twists. So when he told her like, "No, we're not mates." I was like, "Rats. I thought they were mates." Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you?
I kind of knew they were mates beforehand. And we'll talk more about this as we get into different parts of our thoughts that we have about this book and the parts we really want to talk about. But I've seen it in other books where this happens, so I wasn't necessarily surprised. Also, there's so many hints. There's so many hints where it was like, he was always looking at her. He always wanted to make sure she was okay. And they always reference like, this is my wife, my wife, my wife. And I think
True.
if it was like collateral for the sake of just being collateral,
Uh-huh.
it would be Misery or the vampire Misery. It wouldn't be where he was consistently saying, "Oh, my
That's
wife."
true because when there's a scene in the book where Misery gets poisoned, like they think the poison was destined for Anna, and Misery eats the poisoned peanut butter, and Lo is just all he's just there at her bedside the whole time. So you're right. But I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, well, he says they're not mates. They're not mates.
Yeah. I mean, it would
Yeah.
have been a complete shocker if they weren't mates. I would have been like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm wrong then.
True.
Darn it." But yeah, I thought it was very interesting, and I agree with you. This idea of mates is a lot different than the Fae idea of mates. It's basically the same in the sense that, this one person's destined for you, and, no one else will be like them to you. But I think mates for werewolves are also a very instinctual
hmm
thing for them.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I think the biggest difference is. And I know some people will definitely say, well, Faye describe it as being instinctual also, but it's more common to always be described this way within these type of books where werewolves are involved. It's always instinctual. It's always like their inner wolf telling them, mate,
Yeah.
mate, like, must protect. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of where I stand on the whole mate idea. But what I really want to know is, how did you feel about the Serena reveal?
I didn't really see that coming. I think it was really cool that she was able to, connect with some werewolves because of Misery, because now she's
Mm-hmm.
married and mated to a werewolf. She gets a mate also at the end, right?
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. So I don't think the in the book at this point she doesn't know, but Cohen, the alpha of another pack, he walks into the what did we call it? The
Like
pack
the pack
house.
house.
Yeah, and he sees Serena and like the mate bond snaps into place for him. So that'll be cool. I thought Cohen was a really cool character and I would not mind reading a bit more about them.
Yeah, the fact that you bring that up is interesting because Cohen is celibate. All of the like all the alphas in his pack are always celibate, and this, they don't have like a significant other. Of course, they pass down their alpha ness, whatever you want to call it, their alpha title to,
Alpha Hood.
yeah, alphahood to other people like in their pack. But Yeah, I would be really curious, especially because Serena technically, unless that's some part of her that does not compute with the human half, you would think she would also have that innate like pull to the mate bond, because Misery doesn't feel that. She knows she cares for Lo, and she knows that she is his mate and she loves him, but he has a different kind of like feeling
Right.
for it. So I do wonder like how, if there will be a second one, if that's something we'll get more details about.
I
So
hope
fingers
so.
crossed. If there is, we will talk about it. Don't you worry.
Okay, so the last thing we want to talk about is what we're going to call the naughty bits. So this book is like soft omegaverse, and we'll talk about omegaverse a little bit also. But omegaverse has to do with werewolves. It deals with fated mates, and it deals with what happens when werewolves mate, which is a thing called knotting. Robin
I'm
can
not
tell
shy
you.
about it. I'll tell you right now.
Go for it.
Mom, if you're listening, I love you. Don't be disappointed in me. Nodding is essentially, why do I sound excited about it? I'm excited to tell you all
I
about it
know.
because I was so shook when it happened in the book. Let me give you, everyone, let me give you a anatomy lesson. So wolves have this thing, dogs have this thing, period, where when dogs are having sex, okay, when they are
Mating.
in there mating, they will, when it comes time to eloquently say bust a nut.
I thought you were going to say, like, when it is time for completion.
I had to say it. When it's time for this, when that happens, they swell up so that nothing can come out of there. Okay. So in dogs, some people call it knotting, some people call it like locking.
Tying.
It's tying. It's just a different. It's as if they want to ensure that an offspring will come from this, or that a potential for pregnancy will follow. It's just like there's other. I'm almost certain there's other types of animals that this happens to similarly, but in dogs specifically, and in this book, werewolves, they knot when they have sex and when they come to completion. So this is what the book talks about. We get where Lo is very hesitant to have sex with Misery because he she doesn't know. This isn't like common knowledge. And he's like, I don't want to hurt you. And she's like, I don't
Mhm.
understand.
Yeah.
And they do, like, there's not a lot of spice in this book, but when there's spice, there's spice. Like there definitely are some scenes.
Yeah,
So
there's no,
yeah.
I would say there's like no spice until the one scene. But like you were saying, they kind of dance around the topic a little bit. He's like, "You don't understand Misery. It's not possible. I'm gonna hurt you. We're physically incompatible." And she's like, "Just tell me." Her approach is very like kind of very matter of fact about it. But once it happens, I didn't think it was that bad.
I didn't think so. Honestly, I'm gonna be completely honest. I thought he was
hmm
gonna have like a corkscrew dick.
Oh my gosh. I mean, he makes it seem that way. Like,
Yeah, I'm
just,
like, what's incompatible, sir? I don't understand.
yeah.
And I just couldn't. I didn't even think about the potential of nodding as an like a thing. But
hmm I knew that it was going to be a thing in this book just because of, like, I'd heard about the book previously, and I heard about the Omegaverse, and I looked up the Omegaverse, and so I knew it was going to come up at one point. But just the way that he doesn't even want to talk about it to Mystery, like he won't just tell her. He at the end actually he's like, "All right, let me just show you," and that's how she learns about it. But I think it was well done. I don't know, it didn't feel like weird or like.
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't super weird. She did it in a way that wasn't as if she's throwing it in your face that this happens.
hmm
And she also didn't breeze past it as if it's something that we're supposed to be used to.
Yeah.
So that was really nice. She approached it as it was. We don't know, but I'm not going to make it where it's so weird of a concept where people are turned off by the idea of this happening between two people. So it wasn't terrible, and it wouldn't make me not want to read, like if she wrote a second book about the series. it wouldn't make me not read it because this happened in the first one, because
Right.
she did it in a very tasteful way,
As tasteful as it can be, I guess.
as naughty bits can be.
As naughty bits can be. And then, so this deals with the omegaverse, like we said, and some people are familiar with it because of Wattpad, apparently. I read a little bit of Wattpad in my younger years, but I never came across the omegaverse. Do you want to talk about it a little bit, like based on what you know?
So it wasn't like, I don't remember there being nodding specifically ever like a big deal. It always was just kind of like normal sex. But I'm sure that people did have books out there with it, and I just never found my way across it. But that's also whenever you were saying that you were surprised about the mate between vampire and werewolf. I wasn't necessarily surprised because that was something that was wrote about a lot in, you know, the Wattpad series, because enemies to
Oh, okay.
lovers is like a big trope. So
Mm.
yeah, but the Omegaverse is very new, I think, in the sense where it's becoming popular with book talk. But yeah, I think it's finally being broached. Ali Hazelwood is taking the tentative steps towards it,
She did it.
but she did it. I think she did a pretty good job. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm not saying this book was like weird, right? Like, we're
Yeah,
talking
not at
about these
all.
things and it might sound weird, but it was not where it was like throwing it in your face,
Hmm.
nodding, ew. It was not like that.
You almost forget like you're dealing with vampires and werewolves. What did you think about the book? What did you rate it?
I rated it 4 stars. I did not hate the book at all. I was a
Mhm.
little nervous because you were like, so Omegaverse, and then I fell down the rabbit hole of Reddit for Omegaverse, and I was hesitant, but I was interested because I was like, wonder what it could be then.
Hmm.
I thought it was well done. The romance was definitely a slow burn.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I know we might disagree on this, but I don't know if it was the best book ever. I mean, I thought it was a good book, but maybe I'm so jaded because all my books that I've been reading recently are all, fae fantasy, that this was like
Hmm.
a different world that I wasn't quite used to. Or it could be that, we're reading all of Sarah J. Maas's books and her books are just so different than Ali Hazelwood's. But I, by no means, did not like the book. Thought it was very interesting. I did think it was a little smooshed, if that makes
Like
sense.
rushed.
Yeah,
Is that what
like a
you mean?
lot of,
Okay.
we kind of brushed over a lot of stuff. I still don't understand exactly the werewolf hierarchy culture. I think we got a little bit more information about the vampires because Misery was the main character and she was a vampire. But, you know, there was a lot of things that I was like, oh, I wish I could get more detail about that. But by no means did I think it was like a bad book. I rated it four
Yeah.
stars, and I'm pretty critical when it comes to reviews.
Yeah. That's fair. I think
So,
4 stars is
yeah.
fair. I gave it 5 stars. It's like a quick and fast introduction to vampires, werewolves, omegaverse. And I think it does that well. But I gave it 5 stars just based on the fact that like I couldn't put it down. And I agree with you about you said it's a good introduction to the omegaverse. I agree with that. I think it is. It gave you just enough so that you're not overwhelmed. And yeah, I really liked it. I think everybody should read this book. I'm glad you read
Right.
it with me.
I'm glad I read it too. I thought it was very, like I said, I have no real issue with the book. It wasn't a spectacularly written book, but it also wasn't the worst book I've ever read. So I'm really happy that we both read it. And we really want to thank you all for listening and for tuning in. We appreciate your support. Please like and subscribe. Follow us at Trophy Wives Podcast on YouTube and at Trophy Wives Pod on Instagram and TikTok. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll all see you next time. Bye.
Bye.